forget the day because I was driving in the car on the way to a sales appointment, and I was pretty lost, pretty terrible at sales early in the game. And, my dad had always been like throwing books at me, and like since I was a little kid, like birthday book every year. And I'd be so mad, like I'm not reading it, I'm not doing it. And for whatever reason that day, I decided I was going to listen to one of those CDs. It was a CD.
Oh yeah.
And I put it in. It was Brian Tracy's No Excuses. A couple hours into it, it's just I'll never forget. I'm driving down 495, and then like the tears just start gushing. I have to like pull over, and I just realized that no one else was ever going to do it for me. I had to take ownership of my life, or it was never going to happen. And it wasn't my parents' fault. It wasn't anyone else's fault that I was on the path that I'm on. Like, and then like all the gratitude and perspective comes in, right? Wait a minute, I'm complaining about the fact that I even know who my parents are. I have two parents. Like how lucky am I? Yeah, of course they had their crap and the things that they went through, but they were always there for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many kids can't say that? And then like that, so that personal development, like if you're a person that's like against that kind of stuff, you have no idea what gifts you are depriving yourself of by letting different perspectives come into your mind so that you can actually realize and start to understand your thought processes.
Justin, what's up, man?
Another day. Happy to be here, my friend.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for jumping in with me, dude. I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, every day is a different adventure,
So, tell us a little bit about who you are. Who's Justin? And Freishtat, right?
Freishtat, whatever.
Freishtat, close.
Yeah, there's no right way to say it when it's that long and difficult to spell. So,
so who are you for all the viewers?
Yeah, so now I'm a hedge fund manager. I'm president of sales at Kerns Capital, but it's been a long, long journey to get to this point. Growing up, I was a hockey player, went to school for hockey, couldn't really figure out my life in college like a lot of entrepreneurs. And, 5 years later, I'm dropping out of college, no degree, going into 100% commission sales. And that's how the journey started for me. I was so lost in college, like just
aren't we all?
I mean, literally, it's just like, college kind of programs a person like me to think you're going to be a failure your entire life. I'm so lost, couldn't fit in there. And then trying direct sales just changed everything. When you make, the first time you get a check for a couple $1,000s in a week, when you thought you were going to graduate and make 30 grand, it's very eye opening. And I was hooked, and that was it. And did that for 10 years, growing the sales side of our food business, and then, exit to private equity. And now in the hedge fund space, it's just amazing how life will roll if you just don't quit and you just refuse to do anything except the tasks in front of you every day.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that. But before we dive into that, you chose some black coffee.
Did.
So why is that? Why black coffee? Why this choice?
Man, coffee's it's an addiction. I'll say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, have you ever done a Dutch test?
I have not, but I'm going to actually soon.
Yeah. So no caffeine allowed for 24 hours. And that will teach you how addicted you are to caffeine.
Did you learn a lot from the Dutch test?
A ton. Yeah. You could arguably say that it might have saved my life.
Really?
Yeah. There's an interesting part in the Dutch test. Most people are doing it just to, see your hormone levels, where you can adjust things, but it also gives you pathways and how you detox and methylate issues in your body. And I had the glutathione pathway not working correctly. And over time, if you can't detox with glutathione, wow, it ends up in DNA damage, and DNA damage is cancer. So to be able to see that in the Dutch test and fix the pathway, who knows, maybe would have never happened, maybe would happen, but this is why we take care of ourselves and, do these things so that we can, see things before they happen.
100%. And I know you were real big, and still are, I'm sure, in health and fitness, especially with Heartland Foods. And I went back and watched some of your podcasts on there, man, talking about a lot of things. You actually had a competitor on there, I think, talking about just food in general and the competitive lifestyle of bodybuilding athletes and all those things. So you've been in it for a while, right?
Yeah, a long time. I mean, we were building an organic food delivery service, all of our partnerships were with health and wellness professionals, right? So we had dietitians, trainers, gym owners, doctors, chiropractors. That's how we did all of our business. So by building those relationships and getting those referral streams going, I learned so much about the health space from all these different wonderful people. And that's how I eventually, dialed in everything that I do now and help other people do it too.
That's awesome. So I want to backtrack. You mentioned the word journey. I want to talk all about the journey. Take me back to the hockey player days and growing up, and just how life panned out for you. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Sports, it's different for everybody, whether it's competitive sports or being a ballerina, whatever it is. It's if you do something like that when you're a child, it's going to teach you so many things that are going to carry over to whatever you do for the rest of your life. And for me, I remember being a very mentally weak person, just scared to be in social situations, right? Like, how crazy is that, right? Speaking on stages now, doing all this crazy stuff, but it truly was my biggest weakness that I hated so much about myself. I had to turn into a strength. And for me, that would really expose that was playing hockey at a high level. You got these cutthroat coaches, you're playing against other intimidating people that are talking trash, and all of that will develop a skin on you. And I'll always be thankful for hockey for that, because get into the sales world, same thing. Everyone's telling it's a lot of pain and suffering. It's tough, right? So putting yourself in tough situations early is going to set you up for the real tough situations that happen out in the real world.
Definitely. So I heard a story that you told. I think you told it a couple times, but as you were growing up, you learned some very valuable lessons at a young age. If you don't mind, dive into that a little bit, because I think that's, man, I heard you say something on, I forgot what his podcast is. The Real Kelly Cardenas, I think?
Cardenas, yeah.
Cardenas, yeah. And you broke it down so beautifully.
Which story are we referring to?
Well, I guess you got, there's quite a few, but the one when you were 12 and your dad exited his business, his first one, and things went a little haywire.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Nothing against him. He's a wonderful person, wonderful entrepreneur, but we're none of us, I think, going into being an entrepreneur, none of us are getting out of this without getting hurt, right? It's going to happen. Just be prepared for that. That's why the fruit is so large, because we're going to get crushed. It's just going to happen. It's part of the learning process, and that's what happened to my dad. He sold a company for millions and millions of dollars, and through unfortunate events, just the way it plans out, the way he invested that money, and the way the market went. There were so many different factors that ended up in my family basically falling apart. Which really sucked, because you really understand going through that how important money really is, and how the lack of it will destroy a family. So yeah, going from living a dream privileged life as a kid to I had a skate park in the basement. He was building me an ice rink in the backyard. Things that most kids never even have a shot of dreaming about. I had it. And then between 12 and 13, it was all gone. And my parents were divorced, and I'm living in an apartment a year later, right? Gone from private school. You lose all your friends. You're going to public school. Like that type of massive hurt and change at a young age like that at the time turned me into a horrible teenager, an angry person full of blame, all these things. And some people never get out of that mode. But what I realized in my early 20s was that it was actually the greatest gift that was ever given to me, because I got to experience that as a child, instead of having to experience that like my dad did as an adult. He's the first very successful entrepreneur, him and my uncle, right? So, and then you look back on it, it's like your parents paved the path, right? And it's your responsibility in the next generation to be better than the generation before you. And it's not just the good things they did that you build off of. You need to learn from the painful experiences and mistakes that they made. And that's just kind of my MO. I was like, I'm gonna learn from this, and I'm just gonna be better than the generation before me, just because it feels like a duty and an obligation to do that for your family.
For sure. How did you channel all that negative stuff that you were going through into something positive into your early 20s when you started to realize that?
I didn't in the beginning. That's what was so bad, is I was just so angry and so full of blame that drugs, alcohol, all of it, excessive partying, should have died so many times doing dumb stuff, because I was just so angry. In a way probably crippled my hockey career. I was pretty good. I
Hmm.
played college hockey, but if you're drinking more than you're training because you've got some pain and trauma that you haven't worked through. I thought I
Yeah.
was just partying, and the truth was is I was just totally broken as a person, and I didn't figure that out until I was probably 21, 22, and I'll never forget the day because I was driving in the car on the way to a sales appointment, and I was pretty lost, pretty terrible at sales early in the game. And my dad had always been like throwing books at me, and like since I was a little kid, like birthday book every year, and I'd be so mad, like I'm not reading it, I'm not doing it. And for whatever reason, that day I decided I was going to listen to one of those CDs. It was a CD
Oh
back
yeah.
then, and I put it in. It was Brian Tracy's "No Excuses." A couple hours into it, I'll never forget. I'm driving down 495, and then like the tears just start
Hmm.
gushing. I have to like pull over, and I just realized that no one else was ever going to do it for me. I had to take ownership of my life, or it was never going to happen. And it wasn't my
Yeah.
parents' fault. It wasn't anyone else's fault that I was on the path that I'm on. Like, and then like all the gratitude and perspective comes in, right? Wait a minute, I'm complaining about the fact that I even know who my parents are. I have two parents. Like, how lucky am I? Yeah, of course they had their crap and the things that they went through, but they were always there for me, right? How
Hmm.
many kids can't say that? And then like that, so that personal development, like if you're a person that's like against that kind of stuff, you have no idea what gifts you are depriving yourself of by letting different perspectives come into your mind so that you can actually realize and start to understand your thought processes and come out the other side just full of gratitude, ready to take on the world.
That's yeah. That's huge. That packs a punch. Hopefully for everybody, so we can all take a step back and be a little bit more thankful for even the bad things going on.
I mean, just like it's gotten worse with time. I know so many people that I want to desperately help that want to blame the government. They want to blame their employer. They want to just blame, blame, blame.
Hmm.
And whether it's true or not is kind of irrelevant. It just isn't
Yep.
going to get you anywhere. Like,
Definitely.
if you can take ownership when it's not your fault, now you're onto something.
Yeah. So you said that college was not for you, and then you said, "Screw this! I'm going into sales." What kind of sales did you start with?
Door to door, at direct sales. I mean, everything from canvassing to actually doing the in-home presentations. That's another thing as a young kid. I mean, that taught me so much. That built up my confidence. Yeah, it was a tough game, right? But I learned the frequency of showing up and 100% commission, getting more no's than yes, like all these things you have to go through to compete for your income on a daily basis. And that's what I did for a long time. It was eat what you kill. If you don't make a sale
Yep.
today, you don't get paid tomorrow. And I operated that way for 10 years, building that business. And then it was my teams having to do the same thing, right? So there's an evolution there. But yeah, I mean, there were days or periods of time where I would go 30, 40, 50, 60 days and wake up and be like, I haven't taken a single day off. And I've worked 12 plus hours, sometimes 16 months in a row because the goals and the vision was just so massive. I couldn't stop. It
Yeah.
was like a vacation, a weekend. I
For
haven't,
what?
I haven't accomplished. I don't feel like I deserve it yet. That
Yeah.
was kind of a good thing and a bad thing. Is I always felt I don't know what the word is. It's kind of like an inferiority, you know. And I needed to keep proving to myself and the world that I could do more and I could be a better person and I could earn at a high level. And yeah, it was a great chip to have on your shoulder. And now
Oh
I
yeah.
think about it a little differently. But being in that mode of feeling inadequate is what drove me to work like that.
It's funny you say that. That's exactly how I felt when I went into sales. I went from the fitness world and stocking milk in a grocery store to a sales job and was like, oh, I kind of suck at this. Like, it's been 3 months. I haven't gotten a deal yet. What is going on? And then just persistence and resilience. You drop the scarcity mindset and you just fail. You fail forward and it just, man, it snowballs from there. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So, were you selling with Heartland? Is that when you got started?
Yeah, yep. And I was
Wow.
before that in college, little odd jobs here and there. Like I was driving trucks, delivering food on the weekends when I wasn't in school. Uh, I was in the walk-in freezer 8 hours a day packing
Jeez.
orders. Like so I really did start at the bottom. $6-7 an hour, and then the whole time I was doing that, I was still in school, and I'm looking at those sales guys, and I'm like, these guys are making 100 grand. It was just mind
Mind
blowing
blowing.
at the time.
Yeah,
Like I'm getting these checks for like 200-300 bucks a week, and I'm working my ass off, right? So yeah, taking that leap into sales was the scariest, but it is what saved my life. The scariest things are what are going to save your life.
for sure. How long was it until you started building a team?
A while. It was a while. The food business is very difficult. We had a very hard time growing that company, and it was always a constant grind to get leads, because no one wakes up in the morning and goes, "I want 6 months of food delivered in a 21 cubic foot freezer," and that's what we sold. So lots of barriers to entry there. So we had to create the leads. We had to create the market. At different times, we would have things that would work. Like in 2015, when Facebook ads rolled out and they were really cheap and they worked and you could target really well, we were able to generate so many leads. I was able to build a pretty big team really quickly. And then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, we can't get leads anymore. These guys are divas now. They don't want to go prospect, and then all of a sudden, like one by one, you're losing your team, right? So we went through
Yep.
all these cycles of building the team, things are working, and now we're losing the team, things aren't working, and it always came down to one thing: leads. That's it.
Always got a prospect.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back, when we got out of that business, sold it to a private equity firm, it's great and all. But what we went through to get to where we were over that amount of time, I would never do a business like that ever again. I would find a business that is easy to generate leads, or the masses are already in the market and you just need to be better than everybody else doing it. Because we were the best doing it. And we kind of had this feeling of like, we're not good at business. Like, why can't we figure out the marketing? Sometimes you just got a tough vehicle and it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, but you guys battled that well. I mean, especially COVID, right? That really helped you guys take off with delivering food during a interesting time, and that worked really, really well for you guys. That was great.
Well, that was the light switch for me. When COVID happened and overnight we stopped spending money on marketing and we just answered the phones
Hmm.
and we tripled our sales. I was sitting there like, wait a minute, what am I missing? Oh, now there's a condition in the marketplace that
Wow.
everyone needs what we have, right?
Yeah.
You need a product like that. And that's why I wanted to get out of it, because I just knew that I didn't want to have to fight to create a market every day.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the best in a market that everybody's already in.
So, other than leads, as far as from like a personnel standpoint, what were some of the biggest struggles with the people you were building on your team? And I'm assuming it was salesmen, right? Or I mean, I'm sure you were building teams within because you got to the VP role, right? And you were trying to build out the whole company in and of itself. But as far as the sales team goes, what were some of the biggest struggles you ran into with building these people?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing by far for us was the margins didn't allow us to pay competitive commissions, right? So that was another big struggle, is trying to get quality salespeople. The type of person that's going to go sell software and make $500,000 a year. We can't do it, right? It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not possible. I mean, I have all the records doing just straight sales, and I mean that job maxes out at 250 to 300K a year if you're going to work 364 or 365 days, right? So
Yeah.
that's a tough sell. So it was very very difficult to hire and train for that, just because the commission schedule just didn't match the ask. We're asking these people to go use their own vehicles, drive to neighborhoods, whether it's door to door, even providing the leads. They got to pay for their gas, they got to do all this stuff, and we put programs in place for sales milestones, but we just were never able to really blow it up and find a model that would work where we could get quality people to do the job, and a lot of them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to battle it. But I'm sure you still built a team of killers. I mean, you grew it huge, right? I mean, you guys, when did you guys exit? Last year?
It was about a year and a half ago.
Okay. And you're still on, right?
I am no longer on. No.
Oh, oh, really?
Yeah.
Full time Kerns, huh?
Full time. Yep. Full time
All right.
Kerns. Kind of just, you know, was ready to move on, and the new company in place, they had everything, their vision, everything under control. The most important thing for me was that nothing was going to change for the customers, and they're still getting the same quality of food. The model's the same. So yeah, it was just time. So moved on.
Awesome. That's great. Well then, tell me about Kerns Capital, because I've been doing more research and listening into what you've talked about it, and it is pretty intriguing, and it should be intriguing for everybody.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in the investing world. Other than health and wellness and all those passions that I had in the old business, I've always wanted to be a high level investor. I mean, being a hedge fund manager was like, if I could pick a dream job, like that would be it. And I always knew that. So when I got the opportunity to do this, it was a no-brainer. I was an early investor. I put money in from day one. I'd been investing heavily in multifamily for years before that. So I knew I wanted to be an investor and be in that space, but to be able to come in and be a managing partner of a hedge fund and drive revenue with much higher, quality conversations, versus selling food packages. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the natural progression of a career.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a time where basic normal investments aren't doing so well, right?
Yeah.
Real estate included. We've got a weird time where the Fed's kind of controlling the direction of all these markets, and as the investor, you don't have too much control of that. And Kerns Capital, what we do is not market correlated. All of our strategies are either swing trading in equities, AI-driven algorithms that trade currency pairings, manual trading in FX as well. So we've got all these blends of trading strategies that are liquid in the sense that if you're in and out of an algorithm every day, you're not exposed to geopolitical events overnight, or all these risk factors when you're just holding stocks, which we do some of that in the swing trades, but it's very calculated and targeted off of technical analysis and fundamentals, all that stuff. So when you aggregate the strategy, I mean, to have a target, our target is 2 to 4% net return to the investor every month. And we've delivered on that every single month since inception. And it's the right thing for the time, given that a lot of things just aren't working. And
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. How does someone get involved with you guys?
Yeah, so we're a 506c hedge fund, which means we're a partnership. And the terminology is important, right? We don't bring on investors, we bring on partners, which means you're an LP of the fund. We're only going to have a certain amount of partners in the fund, and you must be an accredited investor, which means $1 million net worth excluding your primary residence, or you can be accredited by income, 200,000 if you're single, 300,000 if you're married. So if you meet that criteria, look into what accredited investor means. There's a little more on that. Then you can partner with us, and the minimum is 100K for fund one, and it's a 1-year lock. So when you put your principal in, it's got to stay for a year, but you can take quarterly distributions of your profits. As long as they're 25,000 or more, you can take a distribution. So some people are using this as a growth engine, just let it sit and compound. Some people take cash flow every quarter. It's very flexible, right? So you as the investor partner, you can decide, do I want flexibility with this in the sense of growth versus cash flow? You get to decide every quarter.
That's amazing. Dude, AI is scaring me. What are your thoughts about AI? I mean, you guys use AI in this, but what are your thoughts about long-term AI?
Man, I don't know if I'm smart enough to give an analysis on the long-term implications of AI, but I think it's just like anything else. I mean, social media, you either grab that thing by the horns and blew up a brand and you're owning it, or you're watching the market go that direction and no one knows who you are, right? You just got to embrace these things and then figure out how it's going to benefit you, right? What's the play? What's the angle? We're going to keep looking at that in terms of the investing space. I mean, things like Chat GPT. I mean, it can take a lot of work off your hands. Doing newsletters or like whatever you want to send out. You could start with a base from Chat GPT and then edit it up, and it's just making life easier if you're willing to use it. So lots of upside there. I think could it destroy humanity? Probably.
Yep. Probably. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, in the wrong person's hands, yeah. I mean, it's something we need to take seriously, I think, and probably put some regulation on this.
Definitely. So if someone wants to be a part of you guys as being an accredited investor, so million net worth is probably a stretch for a lot of people right now, but making 200K a year may not be as much of a stretch.
Yeah.
But how would you recommend someone starting out, like getting into sales, getting into what would you recommend someone do?
Yeah, I mean, the vehicle has to get you to accredited, right? So that's what I kind of looked at was like, if I can't make enough money to be an accredited investor, I got to change the vehicle because you don't have access to private placement if you don't meet the qualifications. So, and that's the thing. Like in the early stages, a lot of people start investing like after their basic needs are met, and all of a sudden they got $5,000, $10,000, left over. They want to go start buying stocks or whatever. And it's just not time to invest yet. If you really want to play in the accredited space, I'd be reinvesting all that money into things that are going to make me more income, whether that be marketing in my business or whatever it is. You just have to get your income up. So to me, you invest everything in yourself and your future to make yourself better. Conferences, high-end masterminds, you got to get your income up. And the faster you can get your income over 200K, because it's 2 years, you got to have 200,000 in back-to-back years before you're considered accredited. So yeah, I would just be pumping all my money back into getting over that hump. And maybe it's side hustles, right? Maybe it's I got my main thing and I'm going to add in my second thing that's going to get me over the 200. I mean, you got to be just willing to do it, right? I mean, I literally, I'm not kidding. I would work 70 days in a row.
Yeah.
Because that was the math for me to get accredited. It just is what it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you were to go back in time, or even right now, if you had to start over again, if you couldn't be with Kerns, you couldn't do Heartland Foods, what would you start right now? Like, what would you do to start over?
Solar.
Really?
No question. Yeah. It's just of all the different things. Look, and you got to do what serves your skill set. Like I know I'm great at sales. I know I am. So I would be looking at, okay, what's the product that has the biggest commissions where I can get my income to $500,000 a year quickly? And I think solar is that vehicle.
Interesting. I guess it's growing a lot more. I mean, I don't see it too much where I live right now, but I'm sure like out west it's probably huge, right? Like on just the flat plains or whatever. Like, is it pretty big out there in Vegas?
Yeah, it's huge here. It's huge in Florida. I mean, it's huge all over the place, and the government is incentivizing it. It's not like that crazy of a sale. Hey, let's put some solar panels on your roof, and now you won't pay your power bill. You're just going to pay this bill, and it's literally not going to cost you anything, and then it's going to pay for itself, and now you have free energy. I mean, you're not really asking somebody to.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult of a sale, and you can get your income up fast. Same thing with roofs. Like selling roofs. I mean, there's guys making $500,000 to $1 million just selling roofs because
That's crazy.
Insurance companies will pay for it. Hail damage. So it's not a difficult sale to say to somebody, "Hey, do you want a free roof?" Right? Like I'm not in
I'll take it.
Right? So I don't know, like if you can say that. I don't know what the regulations are, but I mean, these are the common sense things I think about. It's like like what can I get into where as long as I do the work, I show up more than everybody else. Like, what does the top guy make? Like that's the first thing I ask. If I was starting over, I would go to all these different sales organizations and just be like, what does a top guy make? And then if it meets where I want to go, I'm just going to go find out what he's doing and do it better and do more of it. And that's it.
That's awesome.
Simple formula.
Yeah. Sweet. Now, you mentioned masterminds a minute ago. And I know that you've mentioned before that masterminds are like the number one acceleration hack in your life. Why is that?
Because proximity is the biggest shortcut there is to success. It's not a book. It's not a podcast. It's not any of these things. It's a person. Mm-hmm. It's always a person, a relationship that's going to take you to the next level. That's why I was stuck for so long. I didn't do it. I didn't see value in it. I was intimidated by it. I don't want to go into this room full of incredibly successful people. It's so intimidating. Like all these things you think about that are preventing your success. Then you put yourself in the room. I would have never met Cody Kerns. I would have never been a managing partner of this firm if I hadn't been doing high-end masterminds, because when the barrier to entry is, let's say $5,000, $10,000 to get in the room, that means everybody else in that room spent that money to be there, right? Those are the people that are doing something of value, and they're in the room because they're looking for other people who are doing things of value, right? Like your skill set is needed in these rooms. It is. And it's just you're kind of it's like dating in the business world, right? I'm looking for my next partner. I'm looking for my next opportunity. How can I help you? What are you looking for? Right? Like the stuff that's going on at a high level is not found on Indeed. I'll tell you that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know,
What have been some of your favorite ones?
For real estate, I really like Chris Rude's Allies Mastermind. That one's been great. And what's interesting is a lot of times you go to these masterminds and you think it's for the content or, the networking, but it's the speakers. It's the people that are on the stage. And if you can go to a smaller mastermind, you're going to get FaceTime with some really high level people. And that's what happened when I went to Chris Rude's Allies Mastermind. We exchanged on Instagram. He told me about it. I went. I'm not even sure, I'm an LP real estate investor, but everybody in that room is doing real estate and at a very high level. People in there with thousands of units. It's crazy, right? And then Chris Noggle is this guy. He's speaking at that event. He's the money multiplier guy. He owns privatemoneyclub.com. And we start talking. We hit it off. And now I'm speaking at his event, right? And these are the connections that have caused millions and millions of dollars to be transacted just because we went into the same room.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Networking, man. It's insane. Yep. It's insane. How did you get started in real estate? Because you have like 1,600 doors. I mean, it's wild.
As an LP, right? So I'm not the operator on any of that real estate. I'm a passive investor. I just send wires and I receive wires. That's it.
It's not bad.
Yeah, but that's and this is where you need to be honest with yourself as an investor, right? I knew I wanted real estate to be the foundation of my investment portfolio, right? Reading every book there is. I started with single doors, buying them myself, realized that was not the recipe. Read a bunch of books about multifamily real estate, and I was like, I got to get involved. And then I started going to these events, networking, trying to find some operators, people that were actually doing it, learning from them. And then I got, the courage to make my first investment as an LP. And greatest thing ever. I mean, terrified though. The first time you do it, you're looking at the deal. When you've never sent a wire for $100,000, that is some nerve-wracking moment. You drive to the bank, like you're sweating. I'm like shaking. They're like, verify the number. I'm like, I'm going to verify like 10 times. This better go to the right. It's just like crazy. Like looking back on it, it's just crazy. Like how scared I was, but that's how it is whenever you do anything for the first time.
Yeah. You got to break the ice.
Yeah. And it worked. Cash flowed at 10%. Great deal. And then I was hooked and I was like, okay, I got to find my next one and just meeting more operators. So cool. And then it's like, now I'm just sending these big wires and I don't even think about it.
Yeah. It's always uncomfortable until you do it. And then it becomes normal. Right. And because, man, that is so wild. This is such a cool conversation. I'm learning a lot. What about doing it yourself did you not like?
Being honest with myself, right? This is, I don't know, maybe it's one of my skill sets is just knowing what I suck at and not trying to extend myself in areas that I'm either not interested in or just don't have it, right? One of the things I've learned from doing some deep work on myself, shout out to Rocky Garza and Onward 72, just confirmation, like you can't change who you are. You can, like your personality is your personality, your skill sets are your skill sets, and you should lean into those and outsource the rest. And I just knew about myself. I was a very linear human being. I'm very good at relationships, people. But when it comes to project management, all the things that go into a commercial real estate, my eyes glaze over. I'm like, contracts, personnel, the same thing in our business at Heartland Foods. I didn't want to do anything except sales because I'm not good at it and I don't want to learn it and it's not fun for me. So it's like, if it's not fun, you don't enjoy it. Like, why would I do that? And I don't even think I had the skill sets to do it. And I knew I was going to go through a ton of pain and suffering and failing if I did try to do it myself, and it was going to consume all this time and whatever, or I could take a little bit smaller return and send the best in the business a wire and let them do it the right way. Very easy decision.
Yeah. That is wild. A lot of things for me to think about. It's kind of shifting my perspective right now. Because in my head, I'm just thinking, man, I want to do X, Y, Z. So I've got to figure out all the nitty gritty of every single thing and then try to do it myself. And then once I understand it, then I can hire and outsource it. It's like, man, what if I just did that from the jump and just actually got moving?
Yeah. I mean, think about it, same thing with the hedge fund. Like if I went and tried to start my own hedge fund, no, right? And then watching what Cody has done with this thing and everything that goes into it, from the legal side, the administration, the PPMs, the compliance, the banking. Like there's so much project management and different hats you have to wear when you're the founder and CEO. That is a massive skill set, right? So, and people just got too much pride, right? Because there was a point where I was like, like the natural next step, I got to go be the entrepreneur. Like I got to be the number one. I got to start my own thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's just not me, right? It's just not, which is great because then I can lean into what I'm great at and run the sales for Kerns Capital and raise a ton of capital. And Cody can lean into all his skill sets, and Sergio's our COO and he leans into his skill sets. And there's no egos. We know we're great at what we do, and we don't try to do the other person's role. And that's what makes a great company is people that know what they're good at and they lean into their strengths, and there's no egos involved.
That hopefully hit everybody as hard as it hit me. That was, yeah. It's so easy to want to get caught up in what you see on Instagram or YouTube of someone being an entrepreneur that's probably for the most part a facade or something just to make you think they're doing something. But yeah, doubling down on your strengths, I think, is underrated, big time.
Yeah.
Relationships, talking, sales, I love all that stuff too, which is why this is so cool for me, hearing someone that's such a high level performer now in such an incredible position. It's like, I got to follow these footsteps. Let me dissect what this guy's doing. Did you picture yourself here, like when you were younger, like what you're doing now?
No.
Really?
No. I mean, it's funny how life progresses and the goalpost moves, right? I mean, I remember when it was like, man, if I could just make 50 grand a year, like I'll be just set,
Oh, you're pulling the heartstrings now, man. I remember saying those exact same words.
Yep. And what's funny though is accomplishing goals, diminishing returns.
It's kind of wild.
You feel that way? Because for me, it was like,
yeah.
I figured out how to not rely on my parents and make $50,000 a year and take care of myself. I don't think I've ever felt a feeling like that since. It was wow, I'm gonna be okay.
I remember sitting like before I got this job in sales now, and sitting there talking to my cousin who's my boss, and him being like, yeah, man, I make like right under six figures. I'm like, you make what, dude? Like I make like 20K a year, dude. If I could make 40K a year, I'd be the happiest man alive. And when I went and interviewed, the boss guy, he's like, that's what you start at, bud. What are you talking about? I'm like, oh shit, this is insane. All right. Like it was so different to me. I went to school to be a teacher. Like, I love people, and that's why I did that. But education's probably not the best thing to get into. And then I just remember thinking, okay, if I can make, the 50, 60K, that's insane. If I can make six figures, I can tell my kids one day their dad made six figures, if I never make it again. And then it just becomes never enough. And the law of diminishing returns hits very quickly and very hard. And you've got to start finding fulfillment out of other things.
No question. Yeah, the feeling of six figures felt 10 times better than getting to 7.
Yeah.
I mean,
with inflation now, like what does it even matter?
Yeah.
It's scary. But I mean, I know it affects everybody, but lifestyle creep. How have you combated that? What are some things you've done to help with that?
Yeah, this is a great topic because everybody's got to go through this. And there's phases to it, right? So I was very disciplined in the beginning. I remember when I met my now wife, we were both negative net worths, like broke, right? early 20s, both in bad environments. I was in Baltimore, just terrible environment, just nonstop party environment. And she's in the same kind of world down in Annapolis. And we were both kind of done with it, like ready to get our lives together when we met. And part of getting on a path is the easiest thing to do is just move, like remove yourself from the proximity, right? It's not just the proximity of getting in the room, it's getting out of the room. And we moved down to Virginia and moved in together and started building our life together. And we had vision, right? Like I was like, look, like we're gonna go into real estate. I don't know how I'm gonna be worth millions. Like you have to have the vision. Like you will only go to the depth that you can dream. You don't have to know how to get there. It's okay to be like, I'm gonna make $100 million and have no clue how you're gonna do it, right? And that's why we were successful, is because our dreams were bigger than what we knew how to do. And that year, she was still in school. We're in a little apartment, and I made that year. I think I got to 90. And the year before, I made 60 grand. But I got out of that environment that was holding me back, and I got focused on working on the weekends, not hungover, right? Most of the time, and got to 90 grand. But we literally saved half of it, and it was the down payment on our first rental.
Nice.
Our first condo, right? So it's like you don't have to make a lot of money. You just have to be committed to the goal, right? So we saved it, we bought that, and then next year 150, right? I went like 3 years of making 50,
parabolic, dude.
And then it was 90, and then 150, and then we bought a townhouse, and we moved out of that condo and rented that one out. And then she graduates college. She gets her big girl job, as a financial analyst, making
wow
70s, right? And now like we're a force now. And then next year 200, and we didn't buy anything. I mean, no, we didn't. The biggest thing we did, I had a company car, right? Toyota RAV4.
There you go.
I love cars. You have no idea how hard it was for me to not put the car.
I know. Oh, I know, dude. There's like 3 Porsche books, a Porsche poster, little Lego Porsches, dude. I hear you, dude.
So here's what happens, right? She's got her job. She'd probably at that point, a year or two later, probably make like 90, right? And I'm up to like, I cracked 200 for the first time, and I'm like, you know what, babe? I think it's time we give ourselves something. And I was looking at my goal pads from like 6-7 years before that when I was broke, and like the R8 was just on every single one. Like I've always wanted an R8, right? So she's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Like you can have it. Like probably just like give it into me, whatever. And so I buy an R8, right? But I bought it on payments because it actually wasn't time. I only put a little bit of money down on it. And after 2 to 3 months of making that car payment, I was miserable. Really? Totally miserable, because, and this is something about your goals. Do not make your goals things. Don't do that. It's like gurus will be like, yeah, like put the picture of the Ferrari, like, and look at it every day when you wake up, and that'll drive you. Yeah, it'll drive you to buy it the second you can afford the payment, and you're going to destroy your future, right? That's what I did.
There it is.
And I was honest with myself after a couple months, and I said, okay, this was a mistake. The happiness and joy from this is not worth the payment, because it's not coming from passive income. I'm using active income, and that's painful. So if you're buying any luxuries with your active income, cut that shit out, right? So you know what I did? I was like, you know what? You live and you learn. Sold the car, lost like 10 grand on it, which really sucked at the time. That was a lot of money for me, especially how hard it is when you're grinding 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
And we got refocused and started buying more real estate, waited. And then we stayed in that townhouse until a couple months ago.
That's the one I've seen with all the $100 million offers right back behind you, and yeah.
So I mean, we bought that townhouse $550,000 when our household income was 150 grand. The last year that we stayed there, 7 figures.
That's insane,
right? So we never income creeped after that R8 experience. I just knew that for me, anything that wasn't basic needs, or like you got to dinner, whatever, but like big purchases, got to come from passive income. So I was focused on getting that real estate in place, all these things. And then once the cash flow could make the car payment, then I went and started buying nice cars again.
Which are?
We got a E63S in the garage and X5M competition.
Very nice.
All paid
Great
for with
choices.
passive income. Like and it feels like a free car. You can actually enjoy it when the passive income pays for it. When you work your ass off for money and then go spend it on something that's losing value, it's gonna hurt in your heart. You won't enjoy it, I promise.
Interesting. I've always had that internal battle of plan for the future, but life ain't a dress rehearsal. So enjoy life, and there's a fine line, and trying to figure that out. Everyone has to figure it out for themselves, right? What that is, but there's a reason I don't have a 911 yet. I've got my first kid on the way in 2.5 months, 3 months ish. So I'm like, thank you God for giving me a kid, or else I'd go buy a 911 probably and make that mistake. So, yeah. So what is your why? Like all these things you're doing, and you're trying to keep stacking everything up. You've got a 7-figure income, which I know you said you should be imagining these things, but I can't even like fathom 6-figure. Well, 6-figure income, 7-figure income, kind of wild in my head.
Yeah, mine too.
So what is? I mean, yeah, I guess ultimately, if someone says like, "Oh, that's normal," like, great, thanks for your ideals of a different world, but what's your why? Like, what are you working towards?
Yeah, my why has changed a lot. It used to be massive wealth, take care of yourself, all the luxuries, and then, go make some good impact in the world. My why changed in a big way just because something happened in my family. And it just shifted. Like my brother, my little brother, just hit remission, but, came down with cancer. And going through that, all the things that, again, like lack of money will destroy a family in different ways. Like if you're on a single income and you got to go fight for your life in the hospital, and
Yeah,
you really want to have to worry about putting, groceries on the table for your kids too. Like that's the realization of the why. Like, and imagine like something like that happened to me, and I had just bought an R8 and I put my wife in that position.
yeah.
I'll never forgive myself, right? So if you're someone listening to this and like it's like this is like every time I take a flight out of Miami and all the kids going to the back of the plane dripping in designer clothes, I'm like, you are one piece of tragedy away from regretting that in a big way. And that's the why. You need to make these investments. You need to work your ass off and put this in place so that, God forbid, you have to step up for someone you love or for yourself. You can do it. And then once you've secured that level of financial freedom and passive income, stop chasing it, right? Like I was still chasing the next level, which is okay. You always want to progress. But for you to feel like you have to and be like killing yourself, like once you've gotten there, give yourself some grace. Like you don't need to chase it anymore. You can actually enjoy just being a little bit and give some time back to people you care about instead of just working 24/7.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at now. My why has changed a lot. Like now I'm not the guy now who's gonna like, I'm not gonna kill myself to be a billionaire. Like I'm not. I'm gonna, to your point, balance the work and the life experience a little bit better now that the baseline's been achieved. Because I do believe that until you do have that baseline financial freedom, you do need to do nothing but work your ass off and secure that bag for your family.
Definitely. Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your brother, man. Glad to know he's in remission. Prayers out to him for sure. Goodness. What is a day in the life like for you?
Now?
Well, I mean, walk me through any of the stages of, I mean, I know sales, you're working constantly. I remember those 12, 13-hour days nonstop, shutting the lights off in the office because I'm going to be the last one in here. I'm going to win. Everyone thinks I'm going to fail. I'm going to win. But even to, doing a lot of the, I guess, VP operations of the company to now in Kerns Capital, like what was just how was your day-to-day, how do I want to word this? How has everything changed?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be crazy, like absolutely crazy. At the height of craziness is when I was doing 75 hard, um, working. I mean, this was towards the end of my time at Heartland Foods, and I was also doing Kerns Capital. I was
Jeez.
up at 4:30 in the morning because I had to get the workouts, had to get the reading done, had to get all that done. I was trying to just build more capacity. That's all. That had always been a theme for me. Is like because you got to build it, right? Like you're not going to be able to work like that in the beginning. But it was like, okay, can I do 6 days a week? I'll work Saturdays, and then it was Sunday, and then it was okay. How can I be more efficient in these days? And I got to a point where I would literally work from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m., go to bed and rinse and repeat. And I was able to manage a lot. I could drive, I could be the top salesperson at Heartland Foods and handle, VP stuff, do our podcast, do all these other things. Kerns Capital at the same time, raising capital there and doing 75 hard. And I had a coaching business that I was doing. And I would meet with, sometimes I do the coaching calls. I'd put them at 4 a.m. if it was somebody who was in the UK because they were on different time zones. So I'm working other time zones and my time zone, right? And some of you were just sitting on this call, like stressing out about 40 hours a week.
Exactly, dude. They don't. A lot of people don't know the grind, and until you do, it takes persistence and resilience to accomplish it. But when you do, I've told myself that if I can take someone and have them trust me to have their life in my hands, basically in their income, and them be with me for years that I've been doing my job, if I can do that, I can do just about anything.
Yeah.
Just prove it to yourself.
It was years of knowing all my friends are at the pool on Saturday and I'm going door to door. I mean, years, right? That's what it's going to take if you want to be at this level. There's no way around it because what you're doing is you're compressing time, right? If everybody's taking off 2 days a week and that's the standard and they're only going to work 8 to 10 hours a day, think about over a 10-year period. If I work all 7 days and I work more hours, I literally just did 30 years of work in 10 years. That's why I am where I am. And it's going to take you 30 years to hopefully get to the same place, except you're going to have inflation running with you. And the key is compressing the time so that you can go parabolic to the inflation. Because if you go baseline 3% like everybody else, guess what? You're never going to get ahead your entire life.
Scary.
Yeah. So it's a realization of that's what it takes. And then look yourself in the mirror and be honest. Like so many people tell me what they want, what they want to do. There's no wanting it. If you want it, you do it. You got to look in the mirror and be like, do I actually want this? And if you don't, cool. Like it's not for most people, but just be honest with yourself because that's how you're going to be angry all the time. And you can never figure yourself out is when you have a false expectation of your effort.
Love that. How long have you been married for?
Coming up on 4 years, but been together for 10.
So like in the beginning, trying to balance relationship and work, what were some ways that you found to do that effectively? I know probably that's a loaded question because there really never is balance. You have to create it. Like you have to always be balancing different things, right? It's a verb, not a destination. But like, what are some things you did to help live that verb?
Yeah. So in the way that people think about balance, I think of it a little differently, right? There's no day-to-day balancing when you're going to do this. It's sacrifice, and both people have to be on the same page. And that's one of the things that I loved so much about my wife is when it was decisions like, hey, should we get married and spend money on this, or should we buy our first investment property? It was, no, let's do the investment property, right? It was like, hey, like, you want to spend money on this ring, or should we get another investment property, right? We always delayed and did what was right for our future because we understood something different about balance. Balance, people think of like work-life balance or day-to-day balance. I think of it as balance over your entire life. I want to front load the work so that on the second half, there's my balance, right?
Yeah.
All in up front, all sacrifice, no balance to have all the balance you want for the rest of your life.
There's a bigger picture.
That's it. And it's
zoom out.
Are you willing to give? Because look, there's 19-year-olds who have more money than me, right? You don't know how long it's going to take you. That's why you don't want to put expiration dates on your goals. So whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, if you commit to, we're going to front load the work, and then we're going to, because there's always that hockey stick moment where like all clicks, it goes there. It took me 10 years. I don't know how long it's going to take you, but I was never going to quit. And that's why eventually it happens.
It's inevitable as long as you're trying. There's this interesting quote from C.S. Lewis that he had this like the whole idea of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when he was like 13 or something. And until he was 50 or 60, he never really acted on it. He's like, oh, I should probably just actually do this now. And then becomes a huge author, right? And because he acted on it. He never, perfect thing to say about the timelines. Well, I know we're coming in on an hour here, but a couple more questions here for you. If you were to go back and give yourself one piece of advice, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what would it be?
Buy Bitcoin.
Well, hell yeah. God, dude, if I had a time machine, man, I would buy both of us a good bit right now.
Yeah. No, that's the advice I would give myself is patience in the process. It's never as bad as it feels when it's bad, and it's never as good as it feels when it is. And I had to learn that with experience, right? Don't get too high on the highs, don't get too low on the lows. This is a marathon, but you want to sprint every day.
Definitely. Do you guys have any plans of doing anything in the crypto world with Kerns Capital?
No.
Well, you guys based in the U.S. It's probably hellacious to do anything. So,
I mean, it's just you do what you know, like, and understand, and what's also compliant.
Yeah, you guys don't need that headache.
No, it's just
at least not yet.
Dicey world, and we love our strategies, and we're doing SPVs now, which is super exciting in private equity. Just closed on Flexport, which is a private company doing $6 billion in annual revenue, and we were able to suck up some shares at a discount from a distressed fund, and it's going to be a massive IPO probably in the next 12 to 24 months. You don't know when it's going to happen, but for us to be able to, as a small hedge fund, swallow up some of those shares after the big boys. I mean, SoftBank was in for $1 billion 6 years ago, and I'm buying shares at a discount right now. It's just surreal, the things that we have access to through the Innovation X fund that we became LPs of. These are $1 billion funds that we're doing business with, and it's just a dream come true.
That is insane. That's awesome, dude. Anything's possible, right? Last question. Favorite book and why someone should read it?
I'm going to say The Lifestyle Investor by, I believe it's Justin Donald.
Why is that?
So this is what shifted my mindset from investing for growth in a nest egg to cash flow, right? The concept, and I've seen this from watching, family members, grandparents, when you save your money your whole life in the traditional sense, you're going to end up with money, but you're going to have no lifestyle on the way. And then once you retire, you're probably going to live through a couple crashes. Happens every 8 to 10 years, right? So you're going to be living in fear your entire retirement. You're going to be drawing down off a nest egg, running against the clock to zero. It's a strategy to be scared and live in fear the rest of your life. And the Lifestyle Investor book, just like with real estate, Grant Cardone, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, all these guys, cash flow is freedom, right? Like our bills hit every month, our expenses hit every month. Why don't we invest in a way that takes care of our expenses? It doesn't make any sense the way we're taught to invest, right? So it's like, I want to invest in things that pay me every month. And if it doesn't pay me every month, I'm not interested, right? So real estate's going to grow and it's going to pay me every month. Takes care of me today, takes care of me in the future. The cash flow never runs out. I can't run out of nest egg, right? So that's the type of investing that I look for. It's just, if it doesn't flow, the answer is no.
I love it. I know you've talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad a lot. And in me watching some of your other podcasts, I've never read it in its entirety. So I just went and go pick it up today. I've got it on my desk. I'm going to start it tonight. I know you said that was a big game-changing book for you too. But I'll pick up this other one as well. But dude, thank you so much, Justin. This has been so much value for me and everyone watching. I mean, this has been great. How can everyone follow you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a
Yeah.
lot of fun. So my personal website's toptierhuman.com. Kerns.capital is the hedge fund website. There's no .com on the back of that. It's just Kerns.capital. And you can find me on all the socials. It's at Justin Freishtat. It's a really tough last name, so I'll spell it for you. It's Freishtat.
I will make sure I have all that in the description down here below and everywhere the episode goes. But I'd love to have you on again sometime, man, to talk about even more things about Heartland Foods, because I know that you've got so much knowledge about the food industry and the farming and even air quality. I know that you had this video about air quality that I was like, God, dude, I need to like dust the fans off or something, man. This guy's got me a little scared. You need to wear a gas mask.
Dude, I mean, water filtration, air filtration, probably more important than the food you eat.
Really?
Literally. Yeah, it's that bad.
Well, we won't get on that now, but definitely another time, man. But Justin, thank you so much, dude. I hope you have a great day, and we'll chat soon, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.